Hello and welcome to Idea Television News Update. I am Adewale Olashopo. We'll begin with the headlines. DISU inaugurates State Police Implementation Committee. Nigeria seeks German investments to boost $10 billion steel market. Gabon moves to stabilize Libreville power grid after outages. Senegalese execute PAPE Wade builds AI-driven HR platform in Montreal. Away from Africa, U.S. Defense Secretary says submarine sank Iranian warship in Indian Ocean. And in business, HAPAG-LLOYD suspends Africa Upper Gulf cargo over Iran tensions. Nigeria crude oil rises above $80 per barrel. And lastly, in sports, UZOHO returns as Super Eagles' first choice goalkeeper. Now the news in full. The Inspector General of Police, Olatunji Disu, today inaugurated 8-member committee to oversee the implementation of state police and advance his policing reform agenda. The committee, chaired by Professor Olu Ogunsake, was unveiled today during his first formal meeting with senior officials, following his confirmation as the 23rd Indigenous IGP. Disu was appointed Acting Inspector General on February 24, 2026 by President Bola Tinubu after the resignation of Kayode Egbetoko and was subsequently endorsed by the Nigerian Police Council. He is expected to be sworn in formally today at the Federal Executive Council meeting. Addressing the force leadership, Disu stressed professionalism, accountability, and respect for human rights while announcing plans to strengthen internal oversight unit. He said decentralizing policing powers would allow different levels of government to play a more active role in addressing rising security challenges nationwide. In other news, Nigeria's Minister of Steel Development, Shuaibu Audu, has called for long-term German investments to develop the country's $10 billion annual steel market. Speaking today, Wednesday, at the Nigerian-German Economic Forum in Dortmund, Audu said the federal government is shifting from exporting raw materials to building local industrial capacity. He said Nigeria, with a population of nearly 250 million people, is positioning itself as a continental industrial hub under President Bola Tinubu's renewed hope agenda. According to him, the country wants partners ready to invest capital, technology and skills to strengthen steel and aluminium production, mineral processing and critical infrastructure, including power, rail, gas and ports. The minister further added that Nigeria records about $10 billion in steel demand annually and holds more than 3 billion tons of iron ore alongside limestone, manganese, copper, lead, zinc, lithium and rare earth minerals. He said the government's goal is to reduce imports, revive key assets such as the Ajaokuta Steel Complex and position Nigeria as a net exporter in the medium to long term. And now to Gabon, the country's national utility, Société d'Énergie et d'Eau du Gabon, has launched technical upgrades to curb repeated power outages in Greater Libreville. Local media reported on Monday, March 2nd, that the intervention targets both electricity transmission and generation as authorities seek to stabilize supply in the capital region. The plan includes repairing a 90-kilowatt underground cable linking to Bisegui and Ambowe substations, faults which have forced reliance on an overhead line and increased grid instability. SEEG is also installing additional gas turbines at the Owendo Terminal Power Plant, expected to raise capacity to 225 megawatts by 2028, alongside a new ACCC overhead transmission cable to reduce technical losses. Meanwhile, the measures from parts of the broader 2025 to 2028 reform program to addressing aging infrastructure, limited generation capacity, and persistent technical losses. The African Development Bank has previously highlighted electricity reliability as a key challenge to Gabon's economy as the government advances to plans to restructure the utility by separating its electricity and water operations by 2027. A Senegalese entrepreneur based in Montreal, PAPE-LLOYD, has built an artificial intelligence-driven human resource platform aimed at supporting corporate decision-making. Wade co-founded already in 2019 in Montreal with a focus on integrating data and AI tools into HR management while keeping employees at the center of corporate strategy. The company develops ready-to-deploy AI solutions, including workplace health and safety tools that enable real-time risk prevention and corrective action. LD also helps organizations design AI strategies by identifying priorities, preparing data, and integrating solutions into existing systems. Beyond the startup, Wade services on the board of Miller, sits on the Technology Transfer Committee of IVADO, and as a board member of the Chamber de Commerce de Montreal Metropolitain. He holds a master's degree from the Institutional Polytechnic de Chelsea and previously worked at Draka and Associates between 2009 and 2018, where he held senior roles in health, safety, and people management. We'll go on a quick break now. The news continues when we return.
Machine customers. Machine customers are AI systems that can make autonomous purchasing decisions on behalf of businesses or individuals. These systems analyze data, predict needs, and place orders without human intervention. For example, AI-powered chatbots can reorder supplies for a company when stock runs low. While this trend improves efficiency, it raises concerns about control and accountability over automated processes. As companies explore this concept further, B2B and B2C transactions will increasingly rely on machine customers.
Welcome back. If you just joined in, this is Idea Television News Update. I am Adewale, and now to the rest of the news. Away from Africa, the United States Defense Secretary has said a U.S. submarine sank an Iranian warship in the Indian Ocean using a torpedo, making a further escalation in the conflict between Washington and Tehran. The incident comes amid ongoing U.S. and Israeli military operations against Iran, which began over the weekend. According to the Pentagon, the strike targeted an Iranian naval vessel operating in international waters. The development follows days of missile and drone exchanges between Iran and Israel and rising tensions across key shipping routes in the region. The latest action adds to fears that the conflict could widen beyond airstrikes and draw in naval forces across the Middle East and the Indian Ocean, with global powers closely monitoring the impact on regional stability and maritime society. And now to business. German shipping company HAPAG-LLOYD has suspended cargo bookings from Africa to the Upper Gulf, citing rising security risks in the Middle East. The company announced the decision today, Wednesday, after escalating tensions between the United States, Israel, and Iran disrupted key maritime routes. The move follows joint United States and Israeli strikes on Iran over the weekend, which triggered retaliatory drones and missile attacks by Tehran targeting Israeli and Gulf states. HAPAG-LLOYD had earlier paused container vessel transits through the Strait of Hormuz and has now extended the suspension to cover shipments from Africa bound for the United Arab Emirates, Iraq, Kuwait, Qatar, and Saudi Arabia's eastern province, including cargo routed through Jebel Ali port in Dubai. Trade between Africa and the Gulf remains significant, with African exports to the United Arab Emirates valued at about $17.6 billion in 2022, while imports from the Emirates reached around $21.6 billion. Analysts warn that prolonged disruption could delay deliveries of minerals, agricultural goods, petroleum, and manufactured products, increase shipping costs, and expose the vulnerability of global trade routes passing through strategic choke points. Still in business news, Nigerian crude oil prices have climbed above $80 per barrel, the highest level since the mid-2024, following United States and Israeli airstrikes on Iran. Brent crude rose to about $83 per barrel today, Wednesday, amid fears of supply disruption in the Middle East. The surge pushes prices well above the federal government's 2026 budget benchmark of $64.85 per barrel, potentially boosting revenue for Africa's largest oil producer. Nigeria, which depends heavily on crude exports for foreign exchange earnings and government income, has however continued to produce below its quota set by the Organization of the Petroleum Exporting Countries, OPEC. Market volatility has intensified as Iran retaliated with missiles and drone attacks, raising concerns over the security of the Strait of Hormuz, a key route for nearly 20% of global oil flows. Meanwhile, the United States President Donald Trump said Washington would protect energy shipments in the Persian Gulf, while analysts warned that rising prices, shipping disruptions and refinery shutdowns across the region could fuel inflation and slow global growth. And now to sports. Head coach of Nigeria's senior national team, Eric Chile, has named Francis UZOHO as the new first-choice goalkeeper of the Super Eagles. The decision comes as Stanley Nwabali remains without a club after terminating his contract with Chippa United ahead of the team's return to action later this month. UZOHO, who served as the second choice at the last African Cup of Nations, where Nigeria finished third, has been handed the number one spot. Chile is yet to make a decision on Maduka Okoye, who missed the tournament after declining an invitation without assurance of a starting role. UZOHO is expected to face competition from Arthur Okonkwo, who recently switched nationality from England to Nigeria. While Okonkwo can feature in friendly matches, he will require approval from FIFA before playing in competitive fixtures, including Africa Cup of Nations and World Cup qualifiers. And that's all we have for you now on IJTV's news updates. But before we go, here's a recap of the headlines. DISU inaugurates State Police Implementation Committee. Nigeria seeks German investments to boost $10 billion steel market. Gabon moves to stabilize Libreville power grid after outages. Senegalese executive PAPE Wade builds AI-driven HR platform in Montreal. Away from Africa, U.S. Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth says submarine sank Iranian warship in the Indian Ocean. And in business, HAPAG-LLOYD suspends Africa upper Gulf cargo over Iran tensions. Nigeria crude oil rises above $80 per barrel. And lastly, in sports, UZOHO returns as Super Eagles' first-choice goalkeeper. Do not forget to follow us across our social media platforms at Idea Television. I'm Adewale Alashokbo. Keep watching.